Live from the owners' meetings, well, at least Matt Williamson is here on today's Peacock and Williamson show. We've got notes on wide receivers, the wide receiver trade block, what teams said exactly what they're going to do in the NFL draft, and a couple of quarterback competitions. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers. Let us know you stopped by. Of course, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, the notifications so you know when we have a new episode ready to go as we break down the entire NFL all off-season long, draft season long, getting ready for the 2025 regular season, because that's why we're all here. We're prepping. We're getting this thing ready to go. And the owners and the GMs and the coaches all together, taking their yearly photo. Everybody's together. And Matt Williamson is there to witness all of it. What's the scene like? What's going on at the owners meetings 2025 this year, Matt?
Yeah, I'll tell you kind of my experience here is we flew in Saturday morning. We left Pittsburgh, got to West Palm Beach mid-afternoon, and really had no Saturday responsibilities. So basically checked in, we were starving, went to a bar, got a bunch of beers and good food, and did that and watched the tournament. No big deal. So Sunday, things are kicking off, though. I mean, Sunday's busy, and my responsibility is a lot different than some of the people I'm with. I mean, most of the people down here from the Pittsburgh media are true reporters. I mean, frankly, my only job is to do 3 hours of radio per day. But because of that, we're often don't know when we're going to fit those 3 hours in. You know, like, for example, yesterday, Mike, I guess I'll start here. I think most coaches do this, that Mike Tomlin's told the local media, hey, I'll give you guys, just you guys, an hour yesterday. And no one really knew when it was, though. So my buddies are over at the Breakers, and let me stop there. Google the Breakers at West Palm Beach. It might be, some have said it's the nicest hotel in America. I mean, I got Ubered over there. It's on its own island, and we are not staying there. I'm at the Marriott, which is fine. But I got Ubered over there and went into the lobby and just asked around, where do I get my credentials? And I was uncomfortable because of the wealth. I mean, it is.
I was going to say, there's no lack of funds. There's no lack of money for a lot of folks down there. And it's funny because, you see what GMs and head coaches make, and they're super well paid, right?
Sure.
And they're like, yeah, like, well, we pay you your salary, and that's nothing compared to what I got in my bank account. So we're actually even a few floors up from you over here at the West Palm Hotel, whatever it is, the Breakers Hotel. And there's a big party that's coming up, right? Pretty soon.
Yeah. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But I mean, like, it reminds me of the Chris Rock skit from 20 years ago where he's saying Shaq is rich. The guy that writes his check is wealthy. Right. The world would have to collapse. It would have to be worse than the pandemic for these families not to be wealthy for generations and generations. And I was in that hotel for maybe 10 minutes and just saw all the wives and families and money and was like, this is insanity. And clearly the Uber that took me over was the crappiest ass car that's been there in 1,000 years. And I mean, the vehicles are insane. I mean, so anyway, I think most of the head coaches and most of the GMs, Omar Khan did it this morning, spend basically an hour with the local media, at their convenience. And unfortunately, my buddies just kind of had to wait around for whenever Tomlin was ready, because he's also on the competition committee. So it's not like he's just up in his room sleeping and drinking margaritas, but maybe he is. I don't know. I mean, but he is. He should. Right.
They're definitely being consumed.
Exactly, as they should. So finally, we did our 3-hour show. And then this morning, I didn't go to it because it's in the morning and I would rather just sleep in, to be honest. But I went last year just to see it. There are 2 really cool events on Monday and then tomorrow on Tuesday where there's 16 big round tables set up. And this morning is AFC, tomorrow is NFC, where every coach is just holding court. I could go over to the Ravens. I could go over to the Bears. It doesn't matter who I'm affiliated with. The Sandos and Schefters and all those people are floating around. And they're basically on the clock for an hour at a round table. Ask them anything you want. And the GMs kind of all do it on their own terms too. So you and I are recording this at noon Eastern on Monday. And I will go over, record my show from 2 to 5, come back to my room, clean my smelly butt up, and then go to the owner's party from 7 to 11, which is awesome. I mean, it's one of the best parties you've ever been to. I'm sure the owners think it's like, nah, this is all right. But there's a Manhattan station, there's a sushi station, there's a carving station, there's an ice cream station that's better than Dairy Queen. There's a band that's probably making $100,000 that they shipped in from across the country. It's everything you could imagine, every drink you ever want, every food you ever want. And, Andy Reid's next to you dancing in the front row. I mean, it's pretty cool.
Oh, man. Do you have the proper attire for this kind of a party? Like, what do you wear to that kind of thing?
A lot. Andy Reid wears like a Hawaiian shirt,
like I was say, because still,
yeah, right? I don't wear Hawaiian.
They're just football guys that are still not fancy pantses, even though their bank account might say otherwise. So you probably get someone who's got, $1 million worth of jewelry on one side of the room, and then Andy Reid in a Hawaiian shirt on the other side of the room.
Right. I play it pretty close, just with slacks and a button-up polo shirt or whatever, and a jacket. No tie. I'm not dancing in the front row. I'm not trying to stand out. Just keep it simple.
All right. Well, once the Manhattans and martinis get flowing, hopefully we get some nice nuggets on tomorrow's episode. And say hi to any other folks. I know Ross Jackson's going to be there from the network. If you see anybody
just heard that, I'm going to meet him in person hopefully tonight for the first time.
By the way, I saw a photo of the swag bag you got. Like, you've got like an entire year's worth of attire. You got shoes, shirts, pants, everything.
Yes. So that's the other thing is this year it was a little harder to find. It was at the Hilton, which is not the hotel I'm staying at, or the Breakers. Last year it was right by Radio Row, where it's like the gift giveaway. And we kind of had to massage it a little bit because we have media credentials. They only go to team credentials. But I had to like go to Steelers.com and prove that I'm like on the Steelers website and all that. And then they let me in. But it was touch and go there for a minute. Awesome pair of shoes. I don't know, 15 different Nike new beautiful things. I mean, I'm wearing my shoes right now that I got last year at the owners meeting. So nice little perk.
So you can retire those and then put a new pair into the
every year, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
And my son, who now wears the same size as me, is probably going to steal all of it.
Oh, there you go. All right. Let's get into some of the dirt and some of the stuff we're hearing from the GMs. We had John Lynch and we had Kevin Stefanski spoke and got some insight there on what's going on with Shane Steichen, with what's going on with the Browns and the Colts quarterback situation. Mike Tomlin, Aaron Rodgers, is he on his way? Feels like that. I think we might find out somewhat soon what the plan is there. And some wide receivers on the trade block. And Broncos GM told us exactly what they're going to do in the NFL draft next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. It's March Madness right now, Final Four time, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on all the action like never before, because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Not a lot of Cinderella stories this year. It looks like we got mostly 1 seeds in the Final Four, but whatever it is that you got your eye on there, you've got spreads, totals, game props for all of the college hoops games in the tournament. Of course, Major League Baseball has now gotten completely underway this week. And NHL, NBA, tons of sports, anything you can imagine, you can find that action on FanDuel, including NFL draft props then all you got to do is visit FanDuel.com or download the app and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That is FanDuel.com.
Last note, super quick, BP. Okay. I mentioned, I'm going back over to the radio show and the radio row and where I spend all my time over to Breakers. Well, that's in the parking lot. They don't let us in the nice area.
You gotta do your show under a tent. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, there's a pop-up tent. I mean, like a pop-up building that they created out of nowhere that's in the parking lot. It's kind of like Caddyshack, the pool or the pond. Well, the pond's good for you.
Swag bag aside, the really important stuff is what happens when the booze starts flowing and you get rub elbows with folks. So tonight is when the good information is going to flow. We'll see. We'll see what Matt Williamson hears at the old owners party. Let's start with wide receivers, because I think we got some clarity potentially on a couple of wide receivers that are rumored to potentially be on the move this offseason. And John Lynch, speaking to reporters, said that he expects Brandon Aiyuk to be a member of the San Francisco 49ers. And he said there's no regret about their extension. We love Brandon as a player, but he said that there was some spillover from last year where teams wanted to try to acquire Brandon Aiyuk, and the 49ers were listening. Tomorrow, essentially, if it doesn't happen today, it's not going to happen, because tomorrow, April 1st, he's got a $22 million signing bonus that hits. And essentially, the 49ers would trade him before that. It would be a money move more so than anything for the 49ers. They would be taking pennies on the dollar. The whole situation seems insane to me, and kind of mismanagement of the whole deal. If you were willing to trade him, that should have happened last year, but they were trying to go for it. That didn't happen with them this season. They went 6-11, and now they're thinking, well, I guess we can listen to those offers again. But now Brandon Aiyuk's hurt, and they're probably getting nothing for offers that makes sense for the 49ers. So as soon as they pay that bonus tomorrow, he's going to stick around on the San Francisco 49ers is the story there. So it's still an opportunity, but it sounds like, now that all the GMs are together in one spot, if that's going to happen, it's going to happen now, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and the whole thing sounded odd to me to begin with, and complicating matter. You laid it out. You're on top of the stuff, of course, with the Niners, but complicated manners, though, is like if I'm the Patriots and I have to trade for him in the next 24 hours and he's injured. I mean, like, I don't know how you can even swing it. I mean, it'd be different if he had a clean bill of health or if it was a broken bone. But now he's going to get the bonus. He's going to be a Niner. Hopefully he's playing sooner than later, And
it doesn't make sense for the 49ers to take nothing and then.
I agree.
Yeah.
Pay the signing bonus
at his lowest value possible. Right.
Right.
So,
right.
But it might be smart for a team if they think they've seen whatever the medicals, talk to Neil Atrache, who does all the ACL surgeries, and be like, what do you think about it? He's like, I think he'll recover fully. It's like, okay, well, you miss half a season, but maybe you do get your number one wide receiver, which is hard to find. But for the Patriots, they haven't gone through the draft yet. So, specifically with the Patriots, it's harder because, maybe we just get, Travis Hunter at 4. And in that case, we wouldn't want to trade for Brandon Aiyuk. So the timing's not great there. The timing's not great because he's not, on the field yet. He's not able to pass the physical. And for other teams, maybe you could see it, like the Cleveland Browns, who they know what they're going to do at pick number 2. And that
Chargers crossed my mind too.
Right. Chargers and his teams have a little bit better idea of where they're at and where a wide receiver might help them. And, if you're trading for Brandon Aiyuk, it's not about the first month of the season anyway. It's about, the long term, because you're going to be paying him for long term. You want him to be your guy for your young quarterback.
I'd even consider it still if I was a Patriots, just because I don't know what to do with all my money.
Yeah, you have some teams make sense because, especially the Patriots, where are you going to find your number one? Unless it's Travis Hunter at 4, or they want to go to McMillan or something like that. Where else are you going to find your number one wide receiver? You're going to be drafting mid-round guys and hoping. There's just a lot of certainty, and again, you're paying pennies on the dollar. So that would be you have the money, and you don't have to pay what it should cost to get a player that could be as good as he is when he's healthy. And it would just be taking on a little bit of risk. But, I think it's still possible that next time we talk tomorrow, a deal happens. It just seems really unlikely.
It does.
Yeah.
And again, if I'm the Patriots, I really don't care about the first month of the season. I'm trying to find long-term receivers for May, and I have money,
That's always felt like the better landing spot for me for a situation like that, because it's not about the right now today.
Yeah.
Let's go to the
So that, folks, that's
Maybe.
how I explained in the first segment. That's why all these nuggets are coming out today. I mean, there's just going to be a lot of microphones in front of head coaches and GMs' faces for the next 2 days,
So Tyreek Hill in the last 48 hours at some point this weekend was just flashing peace signs all over social media, like he was on his way out, and he actually responded to Jason Fitzgerald of Over the Cap, who was saying, who's some player that might be on the move, like on a draft day trade or something, and he said Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek Hill responded to it with a peace sign, and then a peace sign later. So sounds like there could be something potentially with Tyreek Hill. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel was asked about that, and he said, quote, they're fully planning to move forward with Tyreek Hill. So, what else are you going to say there? They're committed, but it does seem like with just what their payroll is, what their build looks like with that football team, that, he's a likely candidate. I don't know if it's like the most likely, but if you were trying to bet, okay, which wide receivers are going to get traded potentially between now and the end of the day 2 of the NFL draft or something like that, Tyreek Hill definitely takes the lead over someone like Brandon Aiyuk, and I'm not sure who else would be at the top.
Yeah, and the logic behind it is if you study the Dolphins cap, it's pretty rough, and they got a lot invested in Waddle. Tyreek is 30, 31. I mean, he's definitely not young. I think it's fair to question, I might even say it's true, that he might have lost a slight step last year. I mean, I know there were injuries. There's, Tua was hurt a lot. There was a lot of things going against the Dolphins, but Jonnu Smith stepped up. They've added a couple receivers not named Waddle in the last 2 years that are sort of interesting. Achan's a big time weapon. Maybe they think they can get away with it and kind of use those resources on the line of scrimmage and just kind of change how they're built.
Really, the last 2 stories just reminds me how weird the NFL is with its contracts and finances and economics, because like teams are willing to spend whatever on some long-term contract, but then once a player has that same contract that the same team is willing to pay, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, we don't want that contract anymore. It's like, well, what the heck? For Brandon Aiyuk is an ACL, and so it's like I guess something's at least changed there, but it's really funny how things work like that in the NFL. I find it fascinating.
And I think you brought it up like a month ago. I mean, like, what percentage of these guys that sign their deals, especially in free agency this past couple of weeks, actually see every dollar or the last year? It's like none.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's however long the contract is, lop the last year off for sure, because if they're warrant another contract with that team, they're going to get a new one before it's over. And if not, then they're not going to see the end of it. Like, so few contracts actually just play out and you just become a free agent unless it's on your rookie contract. And even
very much sure. Yep.
Let's talk about quarterbacks, because there's some quarterback news from the owners' meetings and different GMs and head coaches speaking. Let's go to the Colts, because this is one we kind of already knew because of the move they made to bring in Daniel Jones. And Colts head coach Shane Steichen was asked about that quarterback competition, and essentially it's even. Like, that is going to be an even split for first-team reps between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, which tells me they don't like Anthony Richardson all that much, man.
And this is exactly what I would have done as a head coach. I mean, I think Daniel Jones deserves the respect. He probably had 5 or 6 offers, chose the Colts because he was going to get a real chance to compete. And I haven't totally flushed Richardson. Maybe they have. I still think when, 2 years ago, when you're in draft meetings and you're considering drafting this guy, you have to realize that there is some rawness to him. I mean, to say the least, and this is not going to be built overnight. So if I were the head coach of the Colts in this situation, I would say it is a exact 50-50 split of first team reps, which I think is exactly how he handled it. So I give him credit. We'll see how it goes.
And my takeaway from this is just you have to stop drafting raw quarterbacks, because no team is willing to actually go through.
They say they're patient, but they're not.
Right. We saw it with Trey Lance, and we saw it now with Anthony Richardson, 2 of the rawest quarterbacks coming out that have played the least college football, and the teams were not prepared to see that development through.
It's happened forever. I mean, what's happened for like 20 years. I mean, it used to be like Carson Palmer would sit behind,
and especially with quarterbacks, because how long you can play. Like, and so who's it? Shuck this year, right? Who's been in college for 6-7 years. It's like, just stay in college. And I get there's a payday for quarterbacks early, but it's not helpful to come out too early. And for the teams, I think that you just got to be smart and at least draft a guy who's played some football. Even if they're still raw, they have to experience something in college for multiple years, or you just can't make the pick. You go back to Trubisky or go back to whoever you want. Like
Haskins was one of those guys, one-year starter.
Off the top of my head, I'm sure there's somebody I'm forgetting, but who is the quarterback that started for 1 year in college and became great in the NFL?
Yeah, it goes back to maybe Bill Parcells knew what he was talking about I need X amount of snaps, X amount of starts, blah, blah, blah. And two guys in this draft actually stand out to me quite a bit. Is Ewers. He basically is losing his starting job at Texas. Couldn't he have transferred to Rutgers or Oregon State and just been the man for a year? And then the real guy I think it fits this bill exactly is Milroe. Like Saban, he didn't fit the new coach's scheme. That became obvious throughout the year. He's going to go in the third round now and be the raw guy, that he has a lot of work to do. And what if he would have transferred anywhere and just ran like crazy and looked awesome for a year and made money,
Browns quarterback situation, Steelers quarterback situation, and the Broncos running back situation. George Payton made it easy on us. Who we're going to put in our mock drafts at pick number 20 for the Denver Broncos. All that coming up. So Denver, let's go to Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski was asked about his quarterback situation for good reason, and he said that they, quote, feel good when asked about their feelings on the team's quarterback situation. Kenny Pickett's a guy that I believe in, according to Kevin Stefanski. What do you think? Is it the Kenny Pickett era, or is this just they feel good because they know they're going to draft a quarterback number 2 overall named Shedeur Sanders?
Probably the latter, or trade for Cousins, or frankly, I know we're going to talk Steeler quarterbacks. It's kind of like just bringing back Mason Rudolph. Like I want to have some bird in the hand before I try digging in the bush. You know what I mean? Like somebody I know I can start a game with. I have some familiarity, optimism, safeness with. I mean, I know that Pickett is new to the organization and Rudolph's going back to the Steelers, but they played against him and know who he is. And he has enough tape out there that both those guys will be quarterbacks for the next 8 years somewhere, and get a handful of starts, and Ryan's Fitzpatrick up their career. And I think there's some value to that whenever you've so much indecision at the quarterback room. At least I know that I have a solid number 2, and I hope not more than that, but maybe that's it,
And you can't plan for beyond the second pick in the draft. So it's either that or something else that you're going to do. And if you don't take a quarterback there, Kirk Cousins is waiting until after the draft before he makes any decisions, because he doesn't want to, get leapfrogged again in the draft like last year. And so, and there's the conversations that they've had behind the scenes that made Myles Garrett comfortable with what their plan was at quarterback, whatever that is. And so they have to know something, and they've done very little. And the team after them in the draft, the New York Giants, has brought in a bunch of quarterbacks, and they seem like they know something. So I think you can add those things together, and we kind of know what's going on here with these teams at quarterback.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. And I know we're going to lead into the Steelers, but it's funny, as you were saying that, I got an actual email from the league comparing Aaron Rodgers and DK Metcalf's stats on deep passes because they had a throwing session this weekend.
Well, okay. Why would Aaron Rodgers be throwing with DK Metcalf?
I wonder. Right.
Mike Tomlin talking to reporters at the what do they call it, the coaches breakfast? Is that what it's called when they do that where they all get?
Yeah, I mentioned he did like the round table yesterday with the local media. I just sat there and listened. He's much more willing to say things there than at the breakfast thing. They're not as psyched to be there. They'd rather hang with their local folks,
So Tomlin said something
yesterday. He could acknowledge the Rodgers thing. Yeah.
Most of the GMs and coaches try to make it seem like what they have already is what the thing is. Tomlin went the other way with it. He said, quote, "I wouldn't close the door on any component of acquisition at that position," when speaking about quarterbacks. So it's all right. first round draft pick, later round draft pick, free agent, trade, or what we all assume is about to be announced on the Pat McAfee show is that Aaron Rodgers signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is already throwing to their wide receiver, DK Metcalf.
I don't know why George Pickens wasn't invited, but okay, that's fair enough. I mean, maybe
the wide receivers on the move, dark horse trade.
Exactly, but I mean, Tomlin even said it. He's like, well, Omar and I skipped the Michigan Pro Day, which is only like a 4-hour ride. They always go there, and they always take people out to dinner and spent a great day with Aaron Rodgers. We thought it was really fruitful. Had him in our building, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, there's a lot of smoke here.
So are they trying to get people off their scent because they want to draft one of the Michigan players so they don't go to the pro day? Is that what's happening there? Because I'm
sure somebody from the organization was there, but
I feel
Kenneth
like
Grant's my number one target. So I'm hoping
Kenneth Grant feels like the guy you would want to go to dinner with.
I bet it is, but that was the only day Rodgers probably could come. So, the head coach and GM had to stick around Pittsburgh. This leads me to another thing, by the way. Like, I keep getting all the time, oh, the Steelers were at Ole Miss's pro day. They were at Ohio State's pro day. They were at Texas's pro day. They must want Ewers or Dart or Howard. I'm like, do you know how many prospects are at Ohio State, Texas, and Mississippi this year? Like, yes, they're watching the quarterbacks, but if they're not there, they're not doing their job, dude.
Well, and it's also like, oh, yeah, because every local reporter asks everybody at the combine, did you meet with the team I cover?
Right.
Oh, yeah, I met with that team. Well, it's not like these teams are just learning about who these guys are, and they're not doing they have the scouting report on everybody, and they do the meetings as they need them to complete their reports. And so, essentially, it's almost meaningless. The only thing you can really gather from 30 visits and meetings is if a team is really meeting with one position group more than the others, you can tell that they're really trying to figure out who they're going to draft from that position group, and they're probably going to take one or two of those positions in the draft. Other than that, you can't really get that much good information, specific player-wise.
And that's why I use the Steelers as an example, folks. I hope you guys realize I'm not just talking Steelers, because this is true for 31 other teams. When you're like, oh, they were at the Mississippi Pro Day, they're interested in Dart. They got 5 defensive linemen and a corner and a receiver. And you think Ohio State's got some dudes? I mean, obviously. And you're right. I just did a podcast on the Steelers 30 visits yesterday. They're all quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, and D tackles. That's all you need to know. And they drafted 5 guys from their 30 visit last year.
Well, if you're planning on starting Jaleel McLaughlin in your fantasy lineup, you might be a little bit worried right now. Javonte Williams.
You might want to shop him real quick while you can get something for him.
Yeah. Audric Estime might not be the lead back for the Denver Broncos, according to GM George Payton. Javonte Williams now at the Dallas Cowboys. And George Payton told reporters, quote, "We'll get it back in this draft," end quote. So have fun with your mock draft.
Dry as it comes, right? Yeah.
There's not going to be a mock draft that doesn't have probably Omarion Hampton at pick 20 to the Denver Broncos now. He just made it easy for the mock drafters. It's not going to be that easy. I think I'm going to fade that pick now because it can't be that easy. He didn't say it was going to be in the first round, but they're going to draft the running back. It's a good running back draft. There's a lot of teams that are going to be drafting running backs. And my question is, does it push running backs down more because there's so many good ones, or do they just start going higher because there's so many good ones in this class? And will we see multiple first round running backs? I don't know, but be prepared to read a lot of mock drafts if you're a Broncos fan that has Omarion Hampton at pick 20 now.
I'm not so sure that one of the Ohio State guys won't sneak in round 1 as well, just because there's a lot of weak areas of this draft. And I've kind of thought this all along that Hampton probably can't get past Denver. I think they're at 20. But now, I mean, we were joking off the air. How often is a GM to saying, "Oh, we're drafting a running back,"
or any position, right? Yeah,
any position. It's great.
We are going to do this in the draft period. That doesn't happen very often.
And some secrets aren't worth exactly hiding either.
Right?
No kidding. It's an awesome running back, and if you don't in round 1, maybe it's not even round 2, but you're going to draft a running back.
Yeah, and teams are going to be looking like, okay, well, we want a running back, and Denver Broncos 5 picks ahead of us, and maybe we should move up a little bit.
Yeah, or 2 rounds have gone by and they haven't taken one.
Right. Well,
now it's down. Now you're playing your hand.
Right. And so, and it's probably and if George Payton's playing chess here, which there's a good chance he is, a lot of these GMs don't say some of this stuff by accident. Sometimes they get a little too honest. He's probably trying to get a certain other position to fall to him, right? Like he probably doesn't.
He really wants Loveland, or
he's open for this certain player that is there for them at pick 20. That's not a running back. So I'm not going to put a running back to the Broncos at pick 20.
The other slight Denver news, I guess there's a lot of contract talk with Courtland Sutton too. He had a really good year.
Courtland Sutton could have could potentially end his career as a Denver Bronco, which is pretty cool. In this day and age, it's hard for a player to play that long in one city, so that would be fun. Bengals head coach Zach Taylor seemed pretty optimistic that they're going to get something done with Trey Hendrickson and his contract, at least in a short-term way to keep him around another season in Cincinnati. And Raiders head coach Pete Carroll said that the Raiders are talking about a contract extension with Geno Smith because they traded for him. He's on his deal. So apparently they're going to try to get a long-term deal done there for Geno Smith.
Yeah, and there is a lot. I mean, it is lying season, as we always say, but I will say being in this environment, maybe I'm just smoke screened, but being around these coaches and GMs, I think they're telling you a fair amount of truth. Things like the Geno extension, why even hide it? That's something we want to do,
One other little note on quarterbacks, JJ McCarthy. I think we already knew that, it's going to be the JJ McCarthy show. And I think he showed a lot before he got hurt last year, and they were very excited about what he was going to be. And I know they've kicked the tires on a lot of different quarterbacks to try to bring in, a veteran player to maybe, just in case JJ McCarthy's not ready. But I think the thought around the organization is like, why block this dude? Because he's, I think O'Connell called him an energizer, just a leader of the locker room immediately. And he saw the stuff that they saw on tape that they thought he would be. They saw that from him early before his, redshirt year there being injured. So it's the JJ McCarthy era with the Vikings.
Which is exactly how Harbaugh described him at Michigan. And I think that's exactly who he is. And the Rodgers to Minnesota stuff never, ever made any sense to me at all.
That was trying to get a couple more dollars from the Steelers, maybe. Right?
Maybe. Yeah, at least I'm still thinking about the Vikes, And lastly, the Vikings set themselves up to operate on a rookie quarterback contract. And that's the plan. They're executing the plan.
Smart. Execute the plan. Yeah. I like it. All right. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen. We've got more notes. We'll see what Matt learns at the owners' party. Hope he's not too hungover to do this podcast tomorrow. It's earlier for me on the West Coast. 9 a.m. might be more difficult. Noon Eastern, I think Matt's going to be ready to go.
I should be all right, I think.
Chill out at the Manhattan station, Matt. But get
hope they have it this year. Maybe it's a martini year. Who knows what that is? Every year is a little different.
Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Matt and I are back tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.